Sometimes I want to go back to the 90s when video games meant everything. I remember getting out of school, looking forward to playing the new game that I got from Sears, the manual whispering secrets on the silent bus ride home. A weekend getting lost in new adventures in dithered fog. No responsibilities, only the glow of the screen. Today, the school is still there, but Sears is gone. Only the husk remains, and we chase the nostalgia, but it's getting more expensive by the day. $250 for a 30-year-old memory. Maybe it's time to admit that it's not the 90s I was chasing, it's myself, fading with every step into the fog. Or I could just get a Raspberry Pi. Welcome to Retronomics, the series that follows price trends in video games, and today we're taking another look at Silent Hill. And I know it's been 3 years since I made the last video about the topic, but a lot has changed. Well, Silent Hill games are still expensive, but at least we got some new games coming down the pipeline. Will that have any impact on the prices of the originals? Well, it's a good thing that we have some recent re-releases to compare to. I'll get into price trends in just a moment, but first, if you are a fan of this type of content, give the video a like and subscribe if you're new. And if you know anyone who's interested in this type of content as well, consider sharing it with them. Alright, Silent Hill, a series once thought to be completely dormant, has had a revival in recent years with Silent Hill 2 Remake released in October of 2024 and the announcement of a completely new Silent Hill game set in the 1960s era Japan, which will release in September of 2025, and also an announcement of the original Silent Hill will be remade. So, needless to say, fans are pretty excited. Given the popularity of the series, physical prices of the Silent Hill games aren't exactly cheap. The original North American PlayStation title fetches more than $200, and that's not even the most expensive title in the series. That honor belongs to Shattered Memories on the North American PlayStation 2 at nearly $400. In the past, I've covered North American titles because I'm in the United States and those are the titles that are typically the most popular. But I have included all titles that price charting has had data for since 2020, meaning in addition to North American copies, I have included graded hits versions and PAL consoles. As with prior Retronomics videos, all of the data comes from pricecharting.com and available listings on eBay, and I use that data to predict if the price will go up, down, or stay the same. Meaning, should you buy now to avoid the price rising, wait for the price to drop down a bit, or can you afford to save up over time because the price isn't really going to fluctuate over the next 6 months? So let's get going. Okay, let's start with Silent Hill, the first game that started it all. While the controls take some getting used to, the original Silent Hill game makes up for it in atmosphere, and there's a reason why it's so expensive. Well, there are multiple reasons. One, it's a great game, and two, it's only available physically in English on the North American and PAL PlayStations. There was a version that released all 4 Silent Hill games in Japan, but it's not in English. It is available on the PS3 and PSP store digitally, but not on modern platforms. But the good news is that all versions across the platforms have stabilized in price in spite of the Silent Hill 2 release in October, but that is starting to shift with news of a complete remake. A release date hasn't been established, but the news has renewed interest in the original and an increase in price. The good news is that since it's already an expensive game, the price isn't likely to jump too much, but it is still a good idea to consider whether you want to buy now or wait to see if the price cools a bit in the next month or so, but don't expect the remake to drop in price significantly. And the reason why I say this is because Silent Hill 2, the North American and PAL PlayStation 2 version, saw a bump in price when the remake was released back in October, but we're seeing the price for the North American PS2 slowly drop in price, while the PAL PS2 version has risen $20 since February. There are still plenty of copies available on eBay, and a lot of people have decided that the HD collection on the Xbox 360 and PS3 are good enough given the price discrepancy. Or they stuck with the remake, which has changes but not enough to justify paying $150 or more for the original. And the original isn't available digitally, so if you really want to experience it, you will have to shell out some coin or buy it on the original Xbox for way cheaper. But the North American PS2 version might drop in further in the next few months. Moving on to Silent Hill 3, which was only available on the PlayStation 2 console-wise. This price has risen in the past few months, but that's because of the included soundtrack. If you don't care about the soundtrack, you can save some money, but it is still expensive for the North American PS2. The PAL version is a third of the price, but also consider that you will need a PAL PlayStation 2 in addition to the game, so it might not be worth the hassle. At least it is available on the PS3 and Xbox 360 in the form of the HD collection. Unfortunately, it's not available digitally outside of the HD collection, but it is considered abandonware on PC, so you could just download it and play it that way. Otherwise, I'd consider buying now if you're looking for the CD soundtrack version. If not, you can wait for a deal and pull the trigger. Silent Hill 4 returned to the original Xbox, which means that you can get this game for about half of what the PlayStation 2 version is going for. It's also available for PC as a physical version or digitally on GOG for $10, which is the only legally way to obtain it digitally. There are plenty of copies available on eBay, but the price has increased in recent months for the PlayStation 2 version. So I'd wait a little bit to see if it drops for that version, but if you want the Xbox version, that appears to be stable, so buy now or wait. Now for the most expensive Silent Hill game, Shattered Memories. Well, it's expensive on the PlayStation 2, followed by the PSP, but it's under $100 for the Wii version, which has more content than the PS2 version. I said in my last video that the PS2 version is pretty much just for completionists at this point, and my opinion hasn't changed. So if you have deep pockets, I'd buy a copy if you see it for the price charting price, since there doesn't appear to be any on eBay as of the writing of this video. The PSP and Wii versions are seeing a slight rise in price, but not as drastic as the PS2 version, so maybe consider going that route before the game rises in price. Shifting gears to something a little less expensive with Silent Hill Origins. Originally on the PlayStation Portable, it was ported to the PlayStation 2 later on, which, surprise, it's the most expensive in North America, followed by the PAL PS2, but on PSP it's pretty reasonable. Of course, it is the PSP, so unless you have a method to properly play it on a television set, you're stuck on a tiny 20-plus-year-old LCD screen. It is at least available on the PlayStation Store for the PSP version, but unavailable anywhere else. And the good news is that the PSP version has remained stable and will probably continue to remain stable for the next 6 months. But if you want it on the PlayStation 2, it probably would be a good idea to look for a good price and snag it as soon as possible. Now let's get into some modern Silent Hill games, and by modern I mean PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, starting with Silent Hill Homecoming. The good news is that this is the cheapest in the series. The bad news is that it's cheap because it isn't considered the best. The prices for all three platforms had a bump just before Silent Hill 2 Remake came out, but they're now back to their original prices, so I would consider buying now if you want an inexpensive game to hold you over until you can find the other games for a reasonable price. Silent Hill Downpour on the PlayStation 3 has been more volatile than the Xbox 360 version, and this is probably because people associate the Silent Hill series with the PlayStation brand rather than the Xbox 360 or any other console, as evidenced by the price discrepancy on the previous titles that I've covered. But the good news is that the price really hasn't moved all that much since my last video, so just like Homecoming, I'd recommend picking up now if you really need to buy a Silent Hill game. While these games weren't beloved by fans of the first game, it is possible that younger generations might get that nostalgia itch and drive the price up over time. Silent Hill Book of Memories is not the same style of classic Silent Hill games because it was released on the Vita, which, I appreciate when handhelds got a total offshoot instead of an attempt to port what would be a compromised game due to the limitations of the handheld. Granted, they probably could have sold more Vitas if they ported the first three games over to the handheld as well, but that's Sony for you. Anyway, this game has been seeing a steady climb in value since December, so if you are interested in the North American version, snag a copy sooner rather than later. As the Vita continues to age, the games will be more difficult to find. The Silent Hill HD collection was not a good collection when it came out, but given how expensive both Silent Hill 2 and 3 have become, beggars can't be choosers, and it is an acceptable alternative to the originals. With the success of Silent Hill 2 Remake, we might get remakes for the third Silent Hill given the announcements of the first one, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. So for now, the HD collection is incredibly affordable and has been stable for over a year, and the PS3 version seems to be the one to get, so buy now or wait. So there you go, the Silent Hill franchise still demands a high price tag, at least the stuff made for Sony consoles, which makes sense. A lot of people associate Silent Hill as a Sony property, like Final Fantasy, despite it being available on other platforms. So the question is, will prices go down? I doubt it, especially when the modern gaming industry has shifted to games as a service model and away from physical games for titles that aren't mega smash hits. Expedition 33, for example, has sold 2 million copies, and physical versions up until recently were commanding a high price because no one expected that the game would explode in popularity, but thankfully reprints are inbound. As I've been saying in other Retronomics videos, the hobby has matured beyond nostalgia. It's no longer just people who remember playing these games as a kid. The iconic games, even the ones that sold millions of copies, will command a high price tag from here on out, assuming that they don't get a physical re-release on modern consoles. I mean, you're gonna have to rule out that they're ever gonna get reprints for the older consoles. And if they do, you're probably going to have to buy it from limited run games and hope that it doesn't take a year to fulfill or have some bizarre QA issue that prevents it from even being played that should have been caught before production. The good news is that emulation is at a point where it is just as good as original hardware, and if you want to use original hardware, they make flashcards and optical disc emulators for almost every system that's available. But there is something about having, quote, the real thing in your possession. It's a tangible item, and the main reasons why games are so expensive in the first place. And if you're not a collector, you probably wouldn't get it. But that's going to do it for this episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Nick, and I'll see you next time.